Hey, what is up guys? Welcome back to another video, and in this video we're going to be continuing on with our iOS development with UIKit tutorial series, and in this particular tutorial we are going to be taking a look at another way of selecting photos, videos, and other assets from our photos library in UIKit. Now I mention other assets, and that's because the type of view controller that we're going to be working with today, PHPickerViewController, allows us to select more than just photos and videos. We can also select spatial media. We can select depth effect photos. We can select live photos. We can do all that sort of stuff with PHPickerViewController. So that's the controller that we're going to be working with today, but there is another thing that we need to be aware of when we're talking about PHPickerViewController compared to UIImagePickerController. And that is, UIImagePickerController allows you direct private access to the photos library. And maybe that's not what you want all of the time. Maybe you want something that's a little bit more private, right? A little bit more privacy oriented. And that is where PHPickerViewController comes in. PHPickerViewController is much more private, much more privacy focused than UIImagePickerController, because PHPickerViewController is summoned and managed, for the most part, in a completely different process, and uses a technology called XPC, or cross-process communication, to be able to communicate with your app and its own process. So that means you don't have direct access to the view controller itself, and you don't have direct access to the photos library. Now, this does mean that there's going to be a little bit more work on our part to get what we need, but that is I think, a pretty fair trade-off for more privacy-focused functionality in our apps. Excuse me. So, with that being said, let's go ahead and actually implement this PHPickerViewController. So in Xcode, I have the same app that we had previously when we touched on UIImagePickerController. However, the difference being I've pulled out all of the UIImagePickerController code, including its delegate, so we can make room for PHPickerViewController instead. The first thing that we want to do is we need to import Photos UI, because PHPickerViewController is not part of UIKit. This is a Photos UI control. So at the top of our view controller here, beneath Import UIKit, we're going to import Photos UI, like that. And so now we have access to PHPickerViewController. The next thing that we need to do is we need to conform to the PHPickerViewController delegate. Now, this delegate is going to be used for us to be able to retrieve the selected media, and it's going to allow us to handle what happens when the cancel button in the picker is tapped. This delegate will have only one method that handles both cases. So we will go into implementing that delegate here in a moment, but we do need to make sure that we conform to it. So after we inherit from UIViewController in our class definition, go ahead and add the PHPickerViewController delegate. protocol conformance. There we go. Now that we've conformed to this protocol, we do get an error that says, hey, we're not conforming to this protocol. So what we're going to do then is down at the bottom of our view controller, let's make Xcode happy by implementing the single method that we need. And that is did finish picking. Now, we'll talk more about this method going forward, but for now, we need to actually figure out how do we present this picker to the user. Well, it's as simple as creating a PHPicker configuration object, setting some properties in that configuration, and then creating our PHPickerViewController, assigning it the configuration that we previously did, and then presenting that controller, as well as assigning the PickerViewController's delegate. All right, so let's go ahead and go into our action method where all of this is going to take place. All right. So inside the body of this method, the first thing that we want to do is we want to create a PHPicker configuration. This will allow us to specify things like how many objects, whether it be movies, photos, whatever, how many things do we want to select at any given time at maximum? How many kinds of assets do we want to support being selected? Which ones do we want to support being selected? All that kind of stuff. There's all kinds of stuff we can do with the configuration. I urge you to experiment with it a little bit, but we're going to cover only a few here to get it working and get you started. So let's go ahead and say var configuration equals PHPicker configuration. That's not what I wanted. Equals PHPicker configuration. There we go. All right. Now, we'll say configuration dot, and we can see here we have all kinds of properties. The first that comes up is filter. Now, filter is the property that we use to specify what kinds of media do we want to support choosing in our PHPickerViewController. This can be movies. It can be, it can be videos. It could be photos. It could be screenshots. It could be depth effect photos. It could be spatial media. Any singular type or any combination of types of media. You can even specify what not to show. So if you have if the smaller list of things is what not to show, you could do that as well. So we'll say filter equals dot, and you can see we have all the different kinds of media that we can work with here. We can say bursts, cinematic videos, depth effect photos, images, live photos, panoramas, screen recordings, screenshots, slow-mo videos, spatial media, time-lapse video, videos, all. So all is special in that all basically says I want to be able to have everything. I want to be able to pick everything. It's not often that you're going to do it that way. If you're building like a social media app, maybe. But if you're doing like a photo editing app, maybe you don't want videos at all. Right? So all might not be the thing you want here, but there is a use for it. That's, if there wasn't a use for it, it wouldn't exist. Now, any is also special. Any takes a single parameter, and that is an array of types of media. And so it takes an array of PHPickerFilter. So that's what all of these objects are, like bursts, cinematic video, stuff like that. Those are PHPicker filters. But any allows you to specify an array of filters to apply to the picker. So if you want, say, only screenshots and screen recordings, for whatever reason, you could say any and then have an array that has screenshots and screen recordings inside of that array, and the PHPickerViewController will know, okay, we should only display these specific filters. You could also apply not to those to some of these as well. So we see not. This takes in a single PHPicker filter to say, hey, we don't want to display this kind of media. So you can combine this with all the other ones to customize it a little bit. So let's say I only want images. So we'll just say images here. Simple as that. Now, the picker will only show images. That includes screenshots, that includes depth effect photos, any kind of photo or image it'll show. It won't show any video related content. We can say configuration dot selection limit will allow us to specify how many items that we want to be able to select at maximum at any given time. So if we want the user to be able to select, say, 5 maximum media choices, that's fine. We can do it. That's one thing that this controller has that UIImagePickerController does not. With UIImagePickerController, you can only select one thing at a time, whereas with PHPickerViewController, you can select multiple things at a time. So we'll say the selection limit is going to be 1, because we only have one image view. But if you, for example, wanted to populate a collection view with images, you could set this limit to whatever you want. Configuration dot. Now you can disable specific capabilities to modify the UI of the picker, to prevent certain things from being shown that you don't necessarily need. There's other properties that you can mess around with here, but we've pretty much gone and done all the ones that we need for this example. Next, we need to actually configure our PHPickerViewController. So we'll say let picker equals PHPickerViewController. This has a convenience initializer where we can pass it our configuration. So pass it the configuration, like that. Then we need to set the delegate for our picker. So we'll say picker.delegate equals self, because this view controller self conforms to PHPickerViewController delegate. And then finally, we need to present the picker. So we'll say present picker, like that. And then we also, before Xcode yells at us, we need to specify whether this is going to be animated, in which case we do want that, so we'll say true here. And there we go. Now when we run our code, we get a successful build, we can tap our button here. Our picker controller shows up, but we hit cancel or choose or anything like that, and nothing happens. We can select an image, and nothing happens. Now, why is this? Well, the reason this happens is because our delegate method doesn't have any code in it, so nothing can happen, right? We can't close the picker or anything like that until we actually implement our delegate method. We have the stub, but we don't have any code inside of it. So let's go ahead and actually do this now. So, inside of this method, we can see as a parameter, so we get PHPicker results. Now, what is this? Well, this is an array of PHPicker result, and PHPicker result basically resembles the media, the asset that we have selected, or collection of assets in this case, that we've selected from our PHPickerViewController. Now, we may or may not have selected anything at all, and in which case we don't really do anything with it. But that's okay, because I'll cover exactly how we can handle all of this, stuff. All right, so let's go ahead, and inside the body, the first thing that we want to do is dismiss the picker. So we'll say picker.dismiss. Okay, come on. There we go. We'll make this true, so that way the picker will dismiss, and we can see an animation for that. All right. Next, we need to confirm that we can retrieve the first item of this array. And that's because we have a selection limit of 1, so we know we only have one item. However, first is an optional property of an array, so we will need to use a guard or if let statement to unwrap that. And then we also need to get the item provider from that. And that in and of itself is also optional. Now, what is an item provider? Well, item provider is of type NSItemProvider. And what that is it's pretty much the type that gets sent over, that contains the stuff from another process sent to this process. So that's where PHPickerViewController, being in a separate process, comes in. All of its selections and stuff like that comes into our app as item providers, and we need to extract what we need from those providers. A little bit more work, but it's worth it in the end for the privacy win. All right, so how do we use a guard statement to wrap or to do this work? Well, it's as simple as saying guard let provider equals, we'll say results dot first dot item provider. If we can't get the item provider because it's nil, or if the first item is nil, either or, we simply want to return. Now, this return will be hit if you hit the cancel button, because if you hit the cancel button, we don't have any results to go through. So everything's nil in that case. All right. Now with that, we have an item provider. And it's a non-nil item provider at this point, because we know we have one. Now we need to confirm that we can, in fact, load specific kinds of data from this provider. Now we want to load a UI image from this provider using its results. So we'll say if provider, no, that's not what I want, Xcode, come on. So guard, not guard, if provider dot can load object of class, and here we want UI image dot self. If we want this, if we can load an item from this, then we know we can actually load an item of type UI image. And to load that, we can say provider dot load item or load object. We want load object of class UI image dot self, and then we need a completion handler. And this completion handler, the first parameter that it takes out of the two is the actual data that we want to retrieve. In this case, it'll be an image, so we'll say image, comma, and then the second is an error. If you want to check for errors, we'll have an error in there like that. And then the first thing we'll do is we will say if let error equals error, then we will print error localized description. As simple as that. Now, image, this is going to be optional. And it's going to be of type NS item provider reading. So how do we get this to a UI image then? Well, we will say guard let image equals image as UI image, else return. And then after that, we can say self dot image view equals image. Our self.imageView.image. There we go. All right, and there we go. Now what we can do is we can run our code. We have a successful build. Let's hit tap me. Now we have our PHPickerViewController presented to us. All photos, I'm going to select our image. Okay, our app appears to have crashed. Oh wait, no it didn't. We're good. And you can see here our image gets displayed. Now we can also run this on my phone here. So I'm going to quickly I'm going to wake up my phone. And then I'm going to take a screenshot that we can use. There we go. Now I'm going to change my run destination inside Xcode. We'll say toolbar, and then all right, my iPhone here. I'm gonna run the app. All right. Now, the app is hopefully going to run here. If my phone will cooperate and actually unlock. Okay, here we go. Now it's loading up. Okay, yes, VoiceOver, you can be quiet now. Now I also want to screen mirror this, so we'll do that here. There we go, screen mirroring. I want to go to my Mac Mini here. Alright, so here we are. Here's the app on the iPhone, a physical device. Well, let's hit Tap Me. And the photo library shows up. We'll say cancel. And there goes the sheet. Right, there goes our PHPickerViewController. Nothing happens because we couldn't get an item provider. Precisely what we expected to happen. Let's go ahead and say Tap Me again to summon the picker. And we'll select this screenshot there. And there's our screenshot displayed in the image view.
75% battery power. Charging. Status bar item. Swipe down with 3 fingers to...
Now, the app, if you've done this correctly, may or may not, depending on how slow your device is, it may like slow everything down a little bit. Typically it shouldn't, but on older devices it might. So things are kind of frozen on my end, but it will display in the image view all the same. All right. So with that is our PHPickerViewController. If we really wanted to, we could also, let's see here. Oh, okay, so we do have an issue here. Okay, so what happened here is we tried to do something in a background thread. So it appears that our app did in fact crash. macOS was also being finicky because we tried to do something from a background thread. So, how do we fix this? Well, we can fix this by closing this editor here. And before we say self.imageview.image equals image, we can say dispatch queue dot main dot async and put our UI update code in here. Now, what are we doing here exactly? Well, dispatch queue is part of a technology called Grand Central Dispatch. This is what allows us to throw tasks to background threads or back to the main thread from a background thread to manage different tasks. This is what we would use most commonly before async and await syntax existed, before Swift concurrency. Unfortunately, there are no Swift concurrency supported versions of what we've covered today, so we can't use async and await for any of this. But inside of the closure for our async method of the main dispatch queue, we can say self.imageView.image equals image. And the reason why it's safe to execute the code in this closure is because anything in this closure will guaranteed be executed on the main thread. All right. So we'll say save, and then we'll run the code again. And I will open the app again on my phone. All right. I will screen mirror again for you guys, if my phone will cooperate with me. Okay. So screen mirroring. I'll have to screen mirror to my Mac Mini here. Alright, cool. So here we are. Let's go tap me. Alright, here's our picker. We'll say screenshot. And there we go. Now, because everything's being done on the main thread, when updating the UI, our app doesn't crash. And we can see the screenshot in the UI image view in the middle of our screen. All right. So with that pretty much covers everything that we need to cover for PHPickerViewController to select media and then display it in in your app itself. Thank you all so very much for watching, and we will see you all in the next video.